Students ask me if they take a break, if they can still learn English, and the answer is yes. And then they'll ask me if I take a week off, can I still learn English? And the answer is still yes. And in fact, in this video, I want to help you to understand why you need a break and what that break might look like. Welcome to English Coach 3Ts. I'm Tanya, and by the time you see this video, I myself will be on break. I'll be on vacation. Woohoo! I'm very excited because Tiana, Talia, and Trinity and I are going on vacation to a little town here in California. I want to tell you a little bit more about that, but first, let's talk a little bit about taking a break in your study routine. So it can be a little bit confusing because you hear everywhere that in order to learn a language, you need to be consistent. And this is true, but part of the consistency is to consistently take a break. It's similar to the fact or the idea that we have a weekend. We work for 5 days, at least here in the United States, we work for 5 days and then we have 2 days off. Of course, this isn't the same for everyone. I myself work for 4 days, then I have a day off, work for a day, day off, and then I work for 4 days again. That's just what works best for me. And that's part of what you need to do. You need to find the best rhythm or the best way that studying works for you, and it needs to include taking a break. So I said I would talk to you a little bit about going on vacation to a little town in California. I wonder if you can guess where we'll be going. I'm going to give you a couple of hints, and then towards the end of the video, I'll let you know where we're going. So this little town is in the bottom half of California. It's in the southern half of California. It's a fairly small town, so it's not a city, and it's near the ocean. Can you guess where we're going? Or maybe you have a really good idea or 2 or 3 ideas of where we're going. Put your guesses in the comment and then watch to the end and see if you were right. Typically, when someone asks me about taking a break, they're talking about taking a break from studying or taking a break from a certain class. So let me talk to you a little bit about how you can find what works best for you. If you've been here with us for a while at English Coach 3Ts, you know that I talk a lot about finding what works best for you. That's because there are so many ways that work well, and not every way works for every person. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do and some ways that you can change it up or do it a little differently. So for me, I have what I consider or talk about as a study routine. Now this, for me, I'm talking about everything I do to learn English. Some of it is active studying and some of it is passive learning. In fact, for me, I like to have a larger amount of passive learning and a little bit of active studying. The reason that is, it's partly the way that I learn, but also it's partly because of the way I enjoy doing things. And also my goal might be different than someone else's goal. So knowing what your goal is can be very helpful. My goal is to learn the language and be able to have a conversation with both native and non-speakers of the language. I also want to feel confident, but it's okay with me if I make mistakes or if I can't remember a word and I have to think of another way to say it. I would encourage you to think about what your goal is, and maybe you have different types of goals. Maybe you want to learn English for your work, but you'd also like to be able to travel, or maybe you have relatives who speak English. Whatever your goal is, it's important to know what your goal is so you can kind of have an idea what's going to work best for you to get to that goal. So let's take a look at what I'm doing by going on vacation. I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't had a week vacation in a very long time. At the end of 2019, we had a family crisis, if you will. It wasn't a huge crisis, but it was not fun. And it turned my life inside out. That made everything different in my life. Literally everything. Okay, maybe not everything, but most things changed in my life. I changed where I lived. I changed the way I was teaching. I changed how I spent time with people. There were just a lot of changes. Because of that, I didn't have time to take a lot of time off work. So instead of taking a full week off, I would take times off in smaller chunks of time. Now, it's always my goal to have one full day off from work. As a small business owner, I often work on one of my days off, but I really work at making sure I get one full day off and one day that's mostly off. Since the end of 2019, I haven't taken a whole week off for vacation. And that's okay because I knew that it was a small amount of time and that it wouldn't be like this forever. The same is true for learning your language. Maybe you need to reach a certain goal by a certain time and you're going to take less time off from learning. Or maybe your goal is more long-term and you know that over the long run, you're going to take breaks and maybe they're not always going to be the same break every week, every month, every year. Let's face it, if you are really overwhelmed or completely stressed out, you're not learning that much anyway. We used to talk about cramming for a test. When I was in high school and college, this was a term that is still used today where people talk about cramming for a test, trying to learn everything in a short amount of time. Like I said, sometimes it's necessary to learn a lot in a short amount of time. But generally speaking, we learn more over time. And so if we're studying and we are totally stressed out, if we are really frustrated or we're tired or we're generally not enjoying the process, we're actually learning less than when we are studying and we feel rested and we're enjoying the process. So, since enjoying the process is a goal that I suggest you are always reaching for, taking a break is going to be part of what makes that goal easier to achieve. Okay, you didn't hear me say take a week off from learning English several times a year, but doing that once or twice a year is probably a good idea. And let's talk about what I mean by a week off. On my vacation, I know that I will spend time passively learning Spanish. So I'm going to choose or be prepared to do things that I enjoy doing in Spanish. I will be reading something that is at a level where I understand close to, if not 100% of what I'm reading. I enjoy reading, and so I'll be taking some time to do that. I don't like writing. Actually, let me take that back and say, I do enjoy writing, but writing in my second language is difficult for me. It's not something that's relaxing. So I have learned strategies so that I can enjoy it more, but it's not something I'm going to do on my vacation. I'll pick that up again when I get back from vacation. And my hope is that by taking a week off, I'm going to be rested and refreshed and ready to do more writing, even though it's difficult. I know that I will be listening to things in Spanish while I'm on vacation. And again, I'll be looking for things where I understand close to 100%, if not 100% of what they're talking about. And if there's something I don't understand, I'm going to let it go as long as I can understand most of what I'm listening to. So these are some things that I'll be doing even though I'm on vacation. So how can I say it's taking a break? Well, like I said, I'm not going to be doing any writing. I'm not going to be pushing myself to learn more grammar, especially grammar that's difficult for me. I'm not going to be pushing myself to learn more vocabulary words, especially ones that are difficult for me. I'm going to look for things to do that are fun for me. And here's the key. If I'm on vacation, if I'm taking my break and I just want to take a nap or spend time with my family playing a game or whatever we're going to do that's fun, then I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to worry about what I get done or what I don't get done for that whole week. So what would happen if you took a whole day off without any passive learning? Or what if you took a whole week off with no learning at all? Then could you still learn English? Yes, you can still learn English, but you can get back into your English and keep going. I recommend that you continue to do passive learning while you're taking your week vacation so that it's easier to continue on your goal. But if it doesn't happen or it's just not in the cards, then you can still continue to learn English. We like to say it's kind of like riding a bike. Once you've learned how to ride a bike, you will always know how to ride a bike. But when you come back after a long time, it might take you a while to get going again. And that's okay. So let's talk about the vocabulary and phrases I used today that might be new for you. First, I'd like to know what your goal for learning English is. It helps me to know what kind of videos are helpful for you. So if you'll write it in the comments below, that would be awesome. And also, think a little bit about what your learning plan is. What are some of the things you enjoy doing to learn English? Write that in the comments below too, and read some of the comments of the other people to get other ideas. So here are some of the words and phrases I talked about in our video today. I talked about being in something for the long haul, and I explained a little bit about what that meant, but I wanted to give you another example. So let's say you are in a relationship and you have a disagreement, maybe you have an argument and you're talking to a friend, maybe they're helping you to work some things out with it, and you're very upset about it, and your friend might say something to you like, well, I know that you're in this relationship for the long haul, so maybe you could look at it like this. What your friend is saying is, I know this relationship is important to you and you want to be in this relationship for a long time. And so over that long time, there are going to be some difficulties, and maybe there's another way to look at it. This is a great idiom to use in your English. So if you'd like to practice it, make some examples. Maybe you can think of 2 or 3 examples and write one of them in the comments to practice your English. I talked about having an experience that turned my life inside out. When we're talking about turning something inside out, we're usually talking about clothing. So we are saying that the outside of the clothing is on the inside. It's inside out. The inside of the clothing is on the outside, or it's inside out. We sometimes talk about this figuratively, like I did when I said my life got turned inside out, which means that a lot of things changed. And typically we use this in a not very positive way. Another example for this idiom might be something at work. Maybe you've been working on a project, you got a lot of it done, then your boss comes and changes a lot of things, and you could say, he turned everything inside out and now I'm not going to get it done on time. You just mean he changed everything. I talked a little bit about breaking something down into smaller chunks. Usually when we're talking about smaller chunks of things, we're talking about something physical. So for instance, you can have a candy bar, a big candy bar. You can break it into smaller pieces, or we might say into smaller chunks. We talk about this with time, where we have a big chunk of time or a smaller chunk of time. It's not a physical chunk, it's just a way that we talk about a smaller amount of time. We can talk about this for time, but we can talk about this for other things as well. Here's another example. If the project is too difficult to do all at once, maybe you can break it down into smaller chunks. I wanted to talk a little bit about the saying, all work and no play makes Johnny a very dull boy. First of all, let's look at the word dull. This word has more than one meaning, but in this case, we're talking about dull as in the opposite of interesting or exciting. It's similar to saying somebody is boring. I mentioned in the video that sometimes we don't say the whole phrase, but rather we just use a chunk of it or a smaller piece of it. We might just say all work and no play, or we may shorten it even more and say, well, you know, all work. So an example is, let's say there are several of us working at the same place, and a bunch of us are going to go after work to happy hour to get drinks or even to go out for dinner. And we're inviting somebody that we really would like to have come along with us. And they say they can't come because they have to finish a project. We might say something like, well, you know what they say about all work and no play. Or we might say, you know, all work. And what we mean is, come, have fun with us. If you work all the time, it's not a good thing. You have to take a break sometimes. I brought this prop. A prop is something we use to show something, to explain the idea of cramming for a test. Because as you can see, this huge thing fits in this little bag. This little bag is, or this thing here is Tiana's hammock. So a hammock is something you typically hang up between two trees or two poles so that you can rest and relax, which is great for the theme of today. But also, this particular hammock goes into this tiny little bag. We could say that it is crammed into this bag because we're putting something big, something large, into something small. We are cramming it in there. And in the video, I talked about cramming for a test. When you're in high school or college or university, you'll hear people say, oh, I have to cram for a test, or I crammed for a test. What they meant was they put a lot of studying into a small amount of time. I don't recommend cramming for a test, although I did do it when I was studying, but I tried not to. Typically, we want to study over a period of time because that way we'll remember whatever we're studying a lot more. But it's not uncommon to cram for a test when you have a lot of things you have to do and you have to take a test by a certain time. If you would like to spend some time with me live on Zoom, I'm currently working on a program that will be coming out in the middle of January. This will be 3 one-hour live classes where we'll work on goal setting and being consistent with your English learning. And what does that actually mean? If you want to be on the waiting list, send me an email. My email is tanya@englishcoach3ts.com. It's here on the screen, and you can find it in the description below. So did you guess where my girls and I are going on vacation? I said we were going to a small town in Southern California. If you haven't guessed, be sure to put your guess in the comments before you listen for the answer. So we're going to Solvang, California. And I'm very excited about this because I've never been to this little town, and it's known for its Dutch architecture. Be sure to watch for another video soon with some of the pictures and videos we took on that vacation. I hope you learned at least one thing helpful today. And if you did, be sure to give us a thumbs up. It really does help us. And be sure to subscribe and share this video with friends you have that are learning English. If you'd like to watch another video where I talk about best practices for learning English, give this one a try. Or if you're ready to learn some vocabulary in context with a real story, give this one a try, and I'll see you there.